So we sort of started off our year really storytelling and space setting. We were joined earlier talking about the different ways we tell our stories and how we want to continue telling our stories. And we had a few actors and actresses in the space. If you remember session 1. Moving forward to Black feminisms and cooperative history, where we really talked about the deep Black feminist history and cooperation, talking about Fannie Lou Hamer, Harriet Tubman as the generals of cooperators, but also those that laid the foundation before us. Moving forward to talking about rethinking solidarity economies and what it means and how this cooperative work shows up in that way. And then finally, a final session before break was about cooperative and ownership structures and concept development, where we sort of really started to lean into the technical aspects of cooperation and what that may look like and where people see themselves. And I understand from that session, there were sort of things that people were sort of grappling with of like formal versus non-formal, or how they see themselves in this work if they want to restructure in a way that hasn't been prescribed. And so just thinking about those before moving into today's session, which is going to lean into more specifics of cooperative planning. And then our afternoon session, which is really leaning into feasibility, which is one of the planning structures. So we're getting more technical as we move along. I will say before I ask this question, today there'll be a lot of content. We have 2 amazing presenters with us today. So please take care as needed throughout the day. Yeah, and this morning we'll have Gary Hampton, and this afternoon we'll have Electra. And Electra has planned a robust feasibility. Feasibility is feasibility. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not, depending on who presents it. So I know she's really tailored it to this group and tried to make it more accessible as well. So she'll have a robust afternoon for us too. But before we get into that, for these last 2 minutes, I just want to ask if there is anything resonating or anything lingering from sort of the conversations we started off with in the fall, between storytelling, Black feminisms, rethinking solidarity economy, cooperative and ownership structures, and concept development. Any questions lingering? Are we ready to move into the second part of our section?
I'd like us to really be in a foundation of community building. When I say community building, I mean within us and building, building that trust and really kind of, if not so much focusing on it, but definitely be in this state of, always reflecting on that and, building that trust so that we can support each other as we go out into our individual.
Okay, I see some claps and some head nods in agreement. Okay. Noted that down. Thank you. I think we can definitely figure out how to start incorporating it for our next session for sure. And I think we try to sort of do that in the small and large breakouts, but I think we can be more intentional about that. So thank you for that. And yeah, we'll figure it out how to sort of create that space for you all, because I do think that's very important. Anything else before I hand the reins over to Gary?
I was thinking when our next in-person session gets together, and maybe you've already done this where you sent out the contact information for the whole group, or if maybe people didn't like that, but maybe we can have 30 minutes where we each sit down, take turns sitting down with each other for about 2 minutes to exchange our contact and what we're doing. And so we can build up a network where we can just reach out and talk to each other when we need to and know how to get a hold of each other.
I'm seeing some hearts. or the up, oh, sorry, is it the note taker?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm seeing some claps in agreement for that too. And that's something we can also practice virtually as well. Charlotte, so thank you for bringing that up, just recognizing. I think that's something we can practice virtual and hybrid as well, as we move forward. Liana, Liana, is she here? Did she just hop out? Okay, never mind. Oh, you are here. Sorry, I thought you moved around. Did we send out contacts earlier?
Yeah,
Okay.
I sent that out when that was asked for, got everyone's consent. So yeah, that's been sent, the emails. And everyone has everybody, like the North Star NSBCF cohort 8, that's everybody. If you wanted to send something to everyone
Okay,
as well.
I'll
Yep,
check
so we
emails then.
can try to resend that too, but yeah, that was sent.
Okay. Scratch that, that was an old idea.
It's still relevant. We could still find out. I think it goes into like this practice of community building too. So I think that's still very much relevant and in line. All right. Lauren, did you unmute? No? Okay. Cool. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. I'm gonna turn it over to Gary Hampton. As I said, this is really diving into the technical aspects of developing in cooperatives and collectives. And so this morning we're joined by Gary Hampton from the Ajani Group and many other groups too. Gary, immediate past chair of Association of Cooperative Educators. Gary Hampton has spent the past 15 years in small business development, entrepreneurship, education, training, and workforce development, including working in business development in the West Virginia State University Extension and serving as a deputy director of small business development for the state of West Virginia. Starting in 2019, Hampton became involved in local cooperative development and has since participated in Cooperation Works and other cooperative development training and has provided advising and consulting to cooperative development organizations. Hampton previously worked for 17 years as an information technology professional in banking and other sectors. He holds a BA from Marshall University in Management, Information Systems, and Finance. And I'll just add before handing it over, Gary is in all the cooperative spaces. I think nationally speaking, even internationally sometimes too. Gary's really been involved and really driven by this cooperative work for a really long time, which I really love. And yeah, he's a great resource. So I'm glad that you're here, Gary, and please take it away.
Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you for that introduction. So I'm pleased to be here. Um, so sometimes we get to thinking about co-ops, and we think of it as a counter to capitalism, but primarily it's something that really meets the needs of communities and fills gaps in communities. And so what I'd like to do is, do I have ability to share here my screen?
I believe so. You are a co-host, but I'll just,
Okay.
yep, you have this. Yeah, please continue.
So I'm just going to just share a presentation as we talk. And I'm also part of the Ajani Group, which is a BIPOC group of cooperative developers, and we're an accelerator. And our thing is really about connecting. And one of the reasons that we came together, as you all were mentioning a number of times as I was sitting here listening, of connecting and building community. And that's how we came about. We found a need for us to have a space to be able to share and express ourselves authentically and without judgment, but also a safe space. And so that's how the Ajani Group came about. And a number of us work across the co-op space in a number of different areas. Um, and as we get into this, we're going to be talking about building our teams and different things. And the Cooley had shared with me the Nexus Cooperative Development flashcards, and I believe you all may have gotten those or have seen those. And so, one of the things that we've done as well is building our team. Is we've aggregated a number of different skills from CPAs to individuals with legal backgrounds, strategic and analysis backgrounds, technology, climate, and urban planning. So we have this very robust skill set and group of folks that we work with and work together. And so with this session, that we got to planning and building our cooperative, and as you're building your cooperative, we had to look at like what were the things that were missing, what were the things that like was keeping us from being able to either thrive or feel safe in some of the spaces. And even within the co-op space, we say capitalism, but there's also these challenges within the co-op ecosystem itself. And so those are a number of things that we evolved into being, and how we came about being. And so, as we all know, co-ops are like, members have shared and equal like ownership and governance. It's not just, the hierarchical components as we've seen, and which makes it a difference when folks are coming into the space. About how they connect, how they build, because you're shifting and sharing decision making and ownership. A lot of times we're dealing with the hierarchical aspects, as you all are familiar, and you've come to know. But and just real briefly, as there's two common ways that we can define co-ops, either by their membership type or the industry and sector. And so you have consumer co-ops, and then you have your producer co-ops, purchasing, worker, and hybrid. And are you all familiar with those different types of membership co-ops? If you can just give me a raise of hands or anything like that, if you're not purchasing. Okay. So consumer co-ops, when you think of things like, I don't know if you're familiar with the outdoors, like REI is, it's basically the consumers are you become a member, and then you go and you purchase from your membership allows you these discounts or access to purchasing. And then producer co-ops many times comes into shape when you're looking at agricultural co-ops. And a lot of times, and so is like that's when folks are producing, and then it's like they're like selling or sharing in their marketing and different things like that. And then when you look at your purchasing co-ops, the one that comes to mind the most is like Ace Hardware. A lot of you all may or may not know that Ace Hardware is a purchasing co-op. That's why they have so many. They can buy so much in volume, and then hopefully reduce the prices at the local levels and make it more affordable. And then as one of the more known in the space is the worker co-op. And so the worker co-op is when you have a group of individuals, just like the Ajani group, is we work together to meet the needs of communities or to deliver services, et cetera, even some products, et cetera. And then there's also the hybrid co-ops, and that sometimes it can be referred to as multi-stakeholder. It may have different elements of different types of co-ops within the models itself. And then is some of the common sectors are agriculture, which kind of brought about a lot of the co-op. Let's see here. So Ace Hardware. Let me move this out of the way. Let me bring my chat up. Right. Ace Hardware is an example of a co-op that doesn't offer membership to its customers, but it's membership as far as individuals under the Ace Hardware umbrella are part of that purchasing co-op. And so is when you also get into like your agricultural co-ops, you can think of Sunkist, Organic Valley, um, many times. Then your grocery co-ops, which is common in many spaces, not necessarily in some of the spaces that truly need grocery stores, but it's common in many spaces. And then you have manufacturing co-ops, arts, energy, ed, home care, and financial. But that et cetera means a co-op could be across any sector. It's only limited by our own aspirations and visions and innovations to really connect. Yes, a hybrid co-op can be a cross between a consumer and producer co-op. So as you could basically have different functioning styles within your membership type. In order for folks to be able to connect, you may be an example could be, say, a farmer that's producing, and then is their members, they have a CSA. And so it's like their members. So you have this customer base, you have this production base. Now, if you have a collection of farms, then that's how that could actually show up. And I'm going to try to move with your chat as well and keep it fluid. Monica, you said you used to work with ACE. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, there's a number of large, very large co-ops, and one of the challenges too with co-ops too is like as they get bigger, they kind of get away from some of the principles, to some of the smaller things. They almost shift into kind of back into that capitalistic realm a little bit, and so. And as we know, is like, with the shared governance, your members are your owners. Your members are on your board of directors, and your members and your board of directors are part of that management team. And so as everybody has a stake in the direction and the course that the co-op itself will take. And then you get into your worker owners, your members, again, board of directors, they're in the management. The overarching operations is everybody has to be aware of what's going on. They have a voice in what's going on. They have depending on your governance structure and decision making structure. If it's a democratic structure, then it's one member, one vote. If it's a consensus structure, it's everyone has a chance to express their viewpoint and their concerns and to bring a vote. And then you're hoping that you can get consensus or come to a point of consent that, everybody is okay with what's happening and the group can move forward at a level of consensus and understanding and shared ownership. And one of the things to remember too is the transparency is so important within the co-op structure because everybody's an owner. Nobody is to be left out or denied access to information, but it's a way that, it creates some challenges because many times we're so used to the top down versus the flatter, more distributive leadership and decision making. And so that becomes a challenge that we have to balance out and come to accept and understand within the co-op space. And it could hinder your co-op and possibly decimate it to where it's no longer in existence. And so the goal today is hopefully to continue empowering you to create your thriving co-ops. As Nicolia shared, you all are at different phases and different spaces along the way, and also considerations around how your how your co-op, or if the co-op model actually applies to what you're trying to do. And hopefully we can help you come out with some actionable pathways to continue planning and building your co-op. And as she mentioned, Electra will be coming in this afternoon speaking around feasibility, but there's an intersection and an entwinement between this process and the feasibility. They go hand in hand as you're developing your business plan and your strategy and approach, and then also into the feasibility, because those two things are dependent on each other in a sense in order to really identify the proper markets and products and services and whether or not they're truly going to be viable. Um, Let's see, can the roles of the owners and executive team, board, committee, et cetera, be some of the same people? Yes, yes. That's and that's one of the big differences. Is the thing is the role is you're a member owner, you're a worker owner, and so is within that is people are going to have different roles, and just like any type of organizations, there's job functions, job roles that are essential to any business or organization to operate effectively and efficiently, and so you'll have individuals that will be on the board. You can have community members that can also be on the board. um, so is all of that comes through your membership, and that really comes down to how you want to define your organizational structure and your governance structure. And that's the beauty of the co-op model, is that you have that freedom of design. You have that freedom of how things are governed. You have that freedom of how things move and operate. And so it really gets down to that last question also comes down to the importance of building your team, making sure that you have a strong team and a trustworthy team. And so as we continue into that, and we're gonna build more into that, but I want to share a real quick co-op success story. I like to use Cooperation Jackson, because they also started from a small group, small network, and it's really about ecosystem development. As and one of you all mentioned, and the irony that I selected this because you're all talking about how can we work together, how can we connect, and it's so critical that you find connections and support within different folks so that you can work through the challenges together. And so Cooperation Jackson, they started, they had a small plan that, and what they've done is they've dealt with a lot of different challenges. They're from Mississippi, and they basically became this emerging vehicle for sustainable community development and democracy and ownership. And so as what they've been able to do as they've overcome challenges, looking for funding and different things, all those things of building an entity, a structure, an ecosystem. But the thing is they were able to create a broad range of co-ops that dealt with meeting the needs within their community, from waste management, from to recycling, security services, all arts and culture, construction, and a number of others. And so is they've been able to make a positive impact in their community, and they could continue to grow over time. And so what I like about what Cooperation Jackson has done is they've been able to make those connections in the community, build power, collective power around a body of work in order to develop these different co-ops. And again, it's a broad range of sectors that they were able to get into. And so it just really, to me, it's a story of kind of perseverance, of really like staying to your guns and working through things. And so if you're interested, you could go to cooperationjackson.org to learn more about what they've done as an ecosystem, because when you're a co-op, that's what you are. You're a part of an ecosystem. You're not just an individual business out here trying to build your bottom line. You're trying to create change, not only for yourself and your members, but also for the community itself. And so you're really looking at how do we, and I just screwed something up here. Hold on. Let me try this again. My apologies. I don't know what I did. I just lost my chat. All right, sorry about that. Tech issue for the techie. My apologies. So those are some of the things. And so as you all are talking about how to connect, how to build community, that's going to be so important because you're going to need that in order to continue to thrive and sustain yourself. And that's the beauty of the co-op business model and ecosystem, is that it's really about building connections and strengthening connections, building collective power through that ownership and shared ownership. And so I just copied and dropped in some of the things that Nicole had shared from the flashcards. And as you're working on that roadmap, and as one, you got to have that shared vision, even if you want to work together as a co-op, as a cohort. But then is within your co-op, what is that shared vision? What is that direction that you want to go in and that you want to accomplish and that everybody can get behind? Because if everybody can't get behind it, you're going to run into these different challenges. You're going to run into stagnation, and possibly like just flailing and just kind of just being there and stuck, and then people are going to give up. And because you know building a co-op is not just going and getting your state license, you know what I mean, and saying that I'm in business, because it's like we can do that individually. This requires us like really like going into this, like building trust, like, you know, can I trust you? And to me is cooperation itself is about trust. And I think that should be emphasized and like stamped and stamped and stamped. Is like the relationships, you have to have trust with one another, because you're potentially coming into a space that you may have had this idea, and you're going to have to give up your ideation, your conceptualization, and share that ownership and stewardship and that path forward with other folks. And so there's going to have to be a level of trust. If you can't have that trust, then is you're going to have some challenges, because it's also you're going to have to let go. Many times in the capitalistic ways, we don't want to let go. It's top down. It's like I see a hand up, Vanessa.
Yeah, it's Venetia. Can you hear me?
Venetia, I apologize. Yes, I can
No,
hear
that's
you.
okay. How you doing, Mr. Gary?
Just
So
fine.
this part right here is really resonating because I have I've just recently faced having to have conversations with my team about how we're building the co-op. And so I do have a question. I don't know if you're going to cover this or not, but while we're building the co-op, we kind of came up with an idea, because this is all new to us, that we are all coming in as entrepreneurs ourselves, right? But we all have a very specialized gift, talent, skill that we want to implement into the co-op or the collaborative, but we don't want to like let go of our businesses. So what we're doing is like cultivating these pillars of our business. So each corner will be our business, but then we'll come up with a new name collectively for our collaborative. Is that a way that we can structure a co-op? Where we kind of have like contractual agreements that, hey, I'm one entity, you're one entity, you're one entity, you're one entity, but together we're building a whole new entity. That way I'm not necessarily changing the name of my organization, you're not changing the name of yours or like its purpose, because we're bringing all of our different purposes together to make one new purpose, if that makes sense. So like, is that a way to structure a co-op?
Yes, I mean, if I were to go back to, let me go back here. I'll go back to the Ajani group. and use that as an example. All right.
Okay.
For instance, Mavry Davis, he is the lending director and runs New West Virginia and also has his own CPA company. Tia Evans, she works with a number of different groups, NCBA, CLUSA, which, well, she just left, and other elements. And then myself, I do consulting. I work in urban ag and different spaces. Rob, he's CEO and director of Small World, which does domain names, website development, etc. Stephen McDowell, he stepped away for a minute, pursuing politics, trying to bring co-ops into the center heart of his political campaign. Esther West, loan officer, also independent consultant, professor, and urban planner. And so is each piece that we bring together, we almost use a Johnny as a pass-through organization. So it's a collective of almost just individuals, but not just individuals, but individuals in either the organizations they represent or the businesses they represent, etc. So is
Okay.
you can operate a co-op as a group like that and not give up ownership. Now is what is that collective shared mission? Because it's you can have a group of businesses coming together, and it's almost kind of like an association or alliance. But let's look at it from the concept of it's a wealth group, okay, and
Okay.
or a wealth holding group, and say is you look at and we can look in some of the capitalistic pieces. You look at like within say Procter and Gamble, different things like that. They have this holding company and all of these subsidiaries. So is if you all can show up in your authentic selves, representing your businesses, bringing those different pieces together, and then as again, what is that shared vision? What is that shared mission? What are you trying to meet? What are you trying to resolve? What are those things that you can come together and like find that the need that you're trying to meet for either the community, for yourselves, your membership, or just to even looking at within the co-op space. Many times, like some people say co-ops should not make money, or you got to make money in order to
Yeah.
sustain yourself. And so is there's this element of capitalism within it, but it's not the capitalism that we're familiar with.
Okay.
We can be very much more responsible in our approach, and it's more is also thinking about the triple bottom line of not just the money that you're making, but the impact that you're making as well. So is there's a different return on your investment, and within the co-op space, I like to look at the ROI a lot of times. Is that return on impact? What difference are you others? If that makes sense to you. But yes, you can structure that way. And so is like and let's also look at each individual member. Like we're all an entity in ourselves. You know what I mean? We don't have to be a business to be an entity. We're all entities in ourselves. So is when we show up and come together, that's so important. Um, but again, is you're still going to have that trust again. It's that's going to be so critical. And then is sharing in that leadership and decision making is going to be critical as well. Um, and so as you're looking and you're building those relationships around trust, and it's just that's just so you got to have the trust in order to collaborate. And so as I see cooperation as that pathway of building and extending trust in order to effectively collaborate for change. And that's to me that's the recipe that we should be on, and that projection. And I think if we can do that and we can be very responsible in the way we go about it, then we will continue to see things climbing in the right directions. All right, I'm loving this chat. I might get distracted by the chat here. So, but yes, it's definitely and the authenticity is necessary because you're not just going in and working a job. You're working together for change. And so, as you're looking at, you also got to decide like what's the right legal structure for your organization and business. You know, and sometimes we go in and we say we want to do this one thing, we choose the wrong structure. We have to be really considerate of what's the best structure, because as you're looking at your business plan and products and services and what you want to do, is sometimes nonprofit structure, is it really a nonprofit structure, or are you really a for-profit? What are you trying to accomplish, and what structure best fits how you want to operate your business, and how do you want to service your community, your members, serve your community, your members, and your customers as well. Any questions to this point? And what are some of the legal structures that you all are currently pursuing or thinking about pursuing or have already formed? You can drop it in the chat. You can pop online real quick.
We're holding cooperative.
Okay, I can't see the person. Who said that?
Sorry, that was me. That was cheapo.
You're a holding cooperative? And
Yes.
so can you help me understand what, when you say you're a holding cooperative, what are you doing? What type of, are you holding businesses? What do you, can you give me a little bit more information?
Yeah. So essentially it's a similar structure to a Johnny, where we're the holding cooperative. We provide, the holding cooperative provides the the operations and governance, and our members are different business owners. So as you were saying, it's that subsidiary type of structure.
Okay, excellent. And so is that becomes, that could be a very important component, because many times some of the challenges for, you have individuals coming together, say if it's a healthcare co-op, individuals may not have the business technical acumen. They may have the passion, the knowledge, and the skills to make that healthcare, to deliver the services, but they may lack some of the challenge, the skills or whatnot for the back office or the back end. So sometimes that holding cooperative model could be very beneficial for some smaller or less skilled co-ops, in order for them to actually be able to thrive and take some of that operating costs or stress off of that back end. Yes, Monica.
Can you hear me?
Monica
Hello?
Smith. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, wait, hold on. Let me see something. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Perhaps. Okay,
Yes.
now, okay. I have my beats on, so the microphone's not that great. But our cooperative is to provide housing for homeless. And we've run up on many challenges, and we are trying to work with other temporary shelter facilities like the Listening House in St. Paul. But the main component is providing outlets for healing for the homeless. So often, especially at the temporary shelters, the homeless individuals are unhoused, is the new term. They sit and they don't do much. They get a meal, but there's no healing going on. There's no activity. So we want to work with different shelters in the Twin Cities to facilitate healing opportunities and hopefully new housing for the individuals who are using those services.
All right. Excellent. I would love to get your contact information after this, just for the fact I've been having a conversation around using co-op housing to combat homelessness in Phoenix, potentially going to be here in Minnesota and in West Virginia. So I've been working with someone that was on detail through the Biden administration and SAMHSA. I don't know. And pardon?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Continue. My apologies.
But no. So it's like I would love to be able to connect with you afterwards as this evolves, because there may be some funding and support coming as well. And it's I definitely will be interested in hearing more about your approach.
Thank you. And my mom is helping me. She's on this call too. Her name is Charlotte. And my mom has been doing so much work. She's just an amazing human being. I'd love to share my contact information with you too. I'll put it in the chat if that's okay.
Yeah, that would be excellent.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Victoria.
Hello. So my question really is around the holding co-op game plan, for lack of a better phrase. Like, is this a structure that several small businesses could have, like pay someone to do the books, have someone on who can, is this a way where folks could get benefits, like healthcare through the cooperative? I'm just trying to see if that's what a holding.
Well, so the holding group could be individuals, it could be different businesses, and they have this shared mission and vision, just like any other single entity business. And so is depending on how you want to structure it, you could be coming together to leverage what each of the strengths are of each individual business, or to aggregate the services or products into a kind of a single funnel to strengthen and be more competitive as a business or structure. And then for your healthcare and stuff, it's still going to be just like any other business. You're still going to have to identify. Now, this you could take on membership. So the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops, they have healthcare offerings and different things like that for their members and member organizations. So that's one way that you could actually look at it, because it's the more folks that you have on a business plan when it comes to healthcare, a lot of times it'll be cheaper. And so those are the things that you have to look at. Those are the things you have to research, and so is like, is you can't just get the answer. Sometimes we gotta, I put our boots on the ground and do that research, and that comes into that feasibility piece, that market research and that business planning. Like, what's really viable? Let's be realistic. What's really realistic for what we're trying to accomplish? What's viable, and how can we make that happen? And so that's also where you have to get into that researching and developing of your structure, your services, etc. And then is like and have a true understanding of what's the capacity of yourself or the partners, because as you can look at that group as, say, a partnership. You know what I mean? And so and then it's like, then you have to decide, how is that patronage redistributed? How are we going to share in, the excess? Does it come out as patronage? Does it get reinvested, or does a percentage get reinvested? And so those are all the things that we really have to work through. And we have to do our due diligence, just like with any other structure or entity. And sometimes co-ops can take a longer time to form and to become a reality, because of you're working and sharing and redistributing, and not saying it's a top down and this is what it is. It's shared all the way through. It's like every bubble has a say in what's going on. Every department has a say in what's going on. Every employee has a say and what's going on. And so is like all of that changes the game up sometimes with that decision making, but it also gives you some agility once you're going and everybody's on the same page. You may be able to pivot quicker than a larger Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 company.
Thank you.
Hi.
Gotta have patience, just like parenting. You're right. All right, somebody else was chiming.
Yeah, I have a question. So, operationally, so what if you had a supportive housing um facility that was nonprofit 501(c)(3), but you wanted to have part of that facility as a grow facility for microgreens or maybe even cannabis. I don't know. You want to grow something that would provide jobs for the residents where they could grow, harvest, and sell what they grow either to restaurants or the public or whatever. Could you create a co-op where the residents are members and owners and they're responsible for managing and working the grow facility, even though the facility is on property owned by the nonprofit? Could you do that?
You could do that, but you just have to remember when it comes to co-ops, it's volunteer participation. So that's one of the when we go back to the Rochdale principles that everybody moves about, which is that's you have principles 1 through 7, but one of the principles is that voluntary participation, that voluntary membership. And so, but you could do that because if you start looking at, say, some of the structures, because there's and like more of the European structures like Amsterdam and different things like that, but is you know, their housing, 50% of the land has to be used for agricultural production. But you could do that. You could have the nonprofit and you can have the for-profit, or there's also nonprofit farms that are educational training, etc. And then as people think nonprofits can't have services, you got to have some type of service to sustain yourself beyond the grants. And so is being able to develop a service or product through your grant funding. And so is you can have that revenue stream. But I'm going to say yes. And then is also you can also have a for-profit that has a nonprofit arm, or have the two working in tangent together. And so then is the agricultural component is possibly renting land in order to for the production. So is there's ways to flesh that out, and it's not impossible. But is the more we can integrate food production and accompaniment and as an accessory to housing, I think that we're going to be better off as we look at meeting holistic needs within communities as far as housing access and food access. Because right now, I don't buy eggs because they're just it's too. I want a chicken coop. How can I get a chicken coop in my apartment? I don't think it's possible, but some spaces you can make that happen. So, but I would look at exploring some of those different options and different models. But is like it's yes, you can do what you want to do as long as it meets the codes and regulations within the city that you're in and your location.
Do we need a lawyer to set up a co-op?
I recommend that you do seek out some type of legal advice and legal direction. Some folks use lawyers, some folks don't use lawyers, but it's best to protect yourself and to protect your members that you're doing things as legally structured as possible. And also, that's a CYA that's going to protect you. So is that way it's like you don't run into those pitfalls that could be very costly and destroy what you've set out and you've invested and spent your time in.
Okay, thank you.
And Monica, your hands up again.
I'll try to be really quick. So did you say CYA?
Yes.
What is a CYA?
I'm sorry. That
Is
means
that right?
Cover
cover your butt.
your butt, Monica.
Cover your
Oh,
butt.
Yeah.
yeah, my
to,
bad.
to
I'm
protect you
sorry.
legally
I was like,
from any
is that
type
a
of
CPA?
liabilities, risk mitigation, reducing liabilities, etc.
Okay, my apologies. I didn't get that acronym. So there's one other question I had because we have family members who have for profit and it's tied to their non for profit, and I'm always really concerned about doing that because of the conflict of interest policy that we have. So I'm wondering, do you have any resources that you could share for tying those two entities together? Because I could ask our attorney, but they are expensive. As if I could get just some cliff notes, that would be fantastic. I could do a Google search as well, but wondering what you
Yeah,
have to offer.
yeah, and can you repeat that first part? Your concerns is having family members.
No, my apologies. So we have family members who tie their for-profit business to their nonprofit entities, and I'm always very concerned about that because of our conflict of interest policy with our non-for-profit. And I've been advised by one of our board members to be very careful when you do things like that. So I'm just wondering, do you have any resources that you would recommend on how to tie those two together using the profit from your for-profit entity to help support your nonprofit?
Yeah, first I would start with my small business development center. Um,
Okay.
because many times each state has one and they have many times free resources and repositories. Um, so that way it's your whatever your geography or state is. And then is also I would look at it's called SELC, SELC, and that's a legal organization within the co-op space based out of California. And then also I would look at DAWI, DAWI, Democratic Workers Institute. I can't remember what the A stands for. Democratic Association of or Workers or something along that line. But I would start with those elements, and then there's also I would look at the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops because many times some of those different challenges may show up within those spaces. But then again, um, there's the small business development centers for your state. Again, many times have free repositories and connecting. And what was that big concern was tying those things in? You said.
Yeah, is having, so for example, if I am president of the nonprofit and I am also an employee of the for profit, then if any decisions that are made for the for profit entity could affect my interests in going back and forth. So I might choose vendors that may increase the profit of the for profit entity. I'm not explaining it well, but there's a conflict of interest policy where I can't, as for the nonprofit, I can't make any decisions that would benefit me financially in an unfair way.
Yeah, and that's something that's a lot of times standard on nonprofit boards, etc. But is one of the things to think about is you think about these multi-million-dollar companies, they all have what? Foundations. And those
Mm-hmm.
foundations are to pass through money. And so is you're able to pass through revenue, etc. Okay, that's a tax break as well. And then it's like it carries out your social mission. And so is really I would look also at my state nonprofit laws as well. And then is possibly looking at the you're just taking a strong look at the bylaws that you have in place. And if you're doing work, even though you're on the board, if you're doing work that's required, that's not just something you can, you know, that requires that extra skill, extra knowledge or whatnot, sometimes there's a workaround or a caveat for that to allow you to be compensated because it's something that you do. It's a special skill, and it's required for things to move forward and be effective.
Thank you so much. And then also, I think we've heard some of these resources in our previous sessions, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta look at these resources. So thank you
Yeah.
very much, Nikuli, too, in the chat. I see you. Thank you.
All right. Wow, we got into the questions. um, so yeah, so I guess we kind of talked a little bit. You really have to look at what legal structure works for you, and then just again, it's democratic control and decision making, and then that also connects into your market research and feasibility study, which electorate is really going to delve into, but is like as you're looking at building this business plan and starting this venture, is there a need for it? What's the market demand? What's the financial viability in order to hold and sustain that pathway forward? And so is, you know, what's your business plan? How are you going to operate? Who is your team? What does that team consist of? What are those skills that they have? You know, and how are you going to fund it? Is it going to be through loans? Is it going to be through member equity? Is it going to be, maybe seeding with grants, um, crowdfunding? So there's a number of different ways to look at raising financing. And many times we find that we're locked out of traditional capital access because of either credit scores or different restrictions. And so that's one of the beauties about the co-op ecosystem, especially with women and minorities and disadvantaged communities. It addresses three of the primary challenges of access to networks, capital, and technical assistance. Those are three primary things. And if you would go back to look at, it's called the Hamilton Project by the Lincoln Institute. It was a document that came out back in 2013, 2015 research. And it was around, you know, what are the challenges to entrepreneurial and economic participation for minority women, women, minorities, and disenfranchised. And it talks around how different things, but it doesn't meet co-ops, but it can be adapted to co-ops because those things and those gaps that are expressed, the co-op ecosystem addresses. Oh, the three things are capital, access to capital, networks, and technical assistance. Because even with doing this work, is like, there's the National Association of Black Cooperators. That's a emerging group that's just got its institutional formation. It's an entity now. We're working on a couple of different things. I've stepped back somewhat from a lot of the direct development work, but I sat on several structures, the resource circle, the structure circle, and the synthesis circle. And so we've worked on developing our bylaws. We've developed that. We've gotten our articles of incorporation out of Pittsburgh, and now there's like we're also looking at work resourcing. We have a cultural and well-being component, so it really would fit and connect with this body of work. So we've already touched on a number of these different elements of building your core team. What are the skills and resources of the folks on your team? How do they contribute to the operational aspects? And it's important that when you're looking at building that team is like, you really do almost like an assessment. of what skills are we at the table and what gaps do we have and how do we fill those gaps? What are the things necessary for us to actually fill those gaps? Do we need to outsource or hire or bring somebody else in, or do we need to train ourselves up? Because is all of that is going to be held within within the organization itself, and so is really identifying that and looking at, and that's how you build a great team. You really got to assess and be honest with yourselves about what are your skills, and then is one of the most important things is what is the commitment, because it can fizzle and stagnate or destroy it as well. Because if everybody can't follow through on commitments, or they're not clear and transparent in their commitments, then as you're going to lose some cohesiveness as you go about doing this. And I'm gonna jump through. These are just the actionable steps, again, coming from what Nikuli had shared with me. Again, that shared need, common challenge, and opportunity. What are you trying to meet? And then it's like, again, jumping back, do you have the gifts? Do you have the knowledge? Do you have the skills? Do you have the commitment in order to meet those needs and challenges and opportunities? And then is what's your market? Is really understanding those elements, and Electra really is going to dive further into it. And then is like those things, once you have those things, now there's like that business plan, that vision, and that governance and that financing. That's now this, how do we operate to sustain it? How do we work together to be effective and moving and accomplishing what we've come together to develop as a co-op? And it's really going to be important to look at your local cooperative laws, because they vary state to state. Unfortunately, we're not like the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and a number of other, even Canada and other European countries and African countries that have a national cooperative law or code. So it's a lot of times it's going to come down to the individual, or it may not exist. But the one thing that does exist in every state is the cooperative law for agriculture. So if there's not one there, is like looking at, can you incorporate elsewhere, or do you have to incorporate as an LLC and choose to operate differently and not like the traditional capitalistic LLC where it's top down, where you still get a chance to decide how you're governed, how you want to redistribute any excess. Does it go back into the organization? Does it go back into patronage? Or in the case of an LLC that's not in a co-op structure, maybe it's going back as some type of dividend or, yearly bonus, etc. So those are the things, but that's the group and the team gets to decide about that as well. And a lot of those things can be defined in your bylaws and your agreements. Monica, you still have a question? Oh, your hand was still up.
My
Okay.
apologies.
Okay, no problem. And then real quick, coming back to that case study on cooperation, Jackson, it was about developing of a co-op ecosystem. So this cohort can be that ecosystem. It's a part of the larger ecosystem. So how do you all find ways to thrive together? How do you find ways of working and focus on meeting each individual needs and understanding that cooperation is not competition? Cooperation is collaboration. And then is, how do you develop those partnerships? Are there opportunities for you all to potentially develop a back-end component that can be supportive of one another if there's limitations on resources? Is there someone that has the capacity for accounting or the software for accounting that can be shared? Is there a way to have a shared resource pool that you all can use as you all develop and work together? So don't limit your vision. Anything that you want could be innovatively done. And so as you have the capacity and ability to do those things, however you choose, you see fit, and within the framing and capacity of all members that are participating. Um, you know, as you get into, again, you'll get into the concerns for market demand, financial viability, and your member capacity and commitments. And those things will help drive your vision and your mission. And then finding that right governance structure is going to be critical for your success as well. So it's really delving down, doing the research and the understanding to help you even identify, again, is how you operate, and then what is your financial strategy as well. And so a couple of key takeaways is, that light at the end of the tunnel, at the end of the road here in this picture, every small step you take can make a big impact. Okay. Collaboration and shared vision are key to the cooperative ecosystem. And then ongoing evaluation can help ensure your survival and sustainment, and hopefully help your co-op to thrive as well. Are there any questions at this point? And there's also one more resource I want to add. It's like $50, LA Co-op Labs. And basically, if you go through that, they'll give you these access to these handouts and these templates that can help you along the way. It's like a $50 fee, very minimal. Sometimes I'm not going to say very minimal because I'm not aware of different people's financial backgrounds. Sometimes $50 could be a lot for us. But it'll take you through kind of a 7-step process as well. Forming a great team, building your business model, creating your financial plan, choosing a structure, and then your market and your feasibility. So all of these things could really be of value and benefit to you as you work through developing your co-op. So look for your key resources like your local organizations that support co-op development, Seed Commons Network, your CDFIs, credit unions are co-ops. Some have limited capacity, limited resources. So I would really look at looking at cooperative development centers. Many times they may not approach it from the solidarity or from a cultural lens, but the technical lens would be applicable when we're looking at just the legal capacities. And then get involved, connect with the National Association of Black Cooperators. I think I'll have to get the email. I'll get it to Nikuli. I think it's info@nabc.coop. If that's been established, if not mistaken, I have to double check. Look for the different workshops. There's so many different things that come online. Association of Cooperative Educators has ed.coop, which also has different things that you can go to it and learn. And one of the challenges we may find is like some of the things may not be as culturally relevant or speak to us in a way that we want to connect with it, but it's up to us to take and extract that information and make it relevant and use what's relevant and adapt it as we need it. They're connecting with networking events and looking for your grants and funding opportunities, and also find your mentor. I think that's very critical when transitioning into the space. Anytime that we can find a mentor, it's so very important.
What was the name of the LA Co-op thing you were recommending?
LA Co-op Lab. Let me double check the exact name. Let's see. LA Co-op. I think it's lacooplab.com. Yes. lacooplab.com is and they do like an academy and different things that you can do a self-paced and has different resources. But if you sign up for if you do the $50 class, I think you get access to the different resources. So they have the pathway, forming a great team, building your business model, your financial plan, choosing a structure, your decision-making process, authentic marketing, and then also gets into crafting a compelling pitch as well. So, and so what's your next move? You know, many of y'all have identified your core group and a shared purpose. Otherwise, you may not be here. That's the reason you're here, because you've done those things. And then that next piece is what Electra is bringing is that feasibility study. And if you're not ready for that, do a planning session. Start planning towards those things, and it takes time. You have to meet and write out your plan. You know what I mean? Have your SMART goals. Make sure you can measure them and make sure they're attainable, and go for it. And that's about it. I don't think I have anything else. Q&A real quick. We're at the end. I know y'all have y'all's session. Any other questions at this point? And also I put the general, also my direct email at Ajani is gary@ajani.coop. But hello@ajani.coop will bring you into our main inbox to be triaged accordingly. I'll stop my share. All righty. Any questions? Anything in particular related to the session and what you've been doing and where you plan to go? Is the WhatsApp group still active on the Association of Black Cooperators, the Black Cooperators group? Or did I accidentally delete it? Because I was in WhatsApp the other day and I did not see it in my listing anymore. So I didn't know if I had purged it during my ending of my purge. Pardon?
It's still active.
Oh, okay. Did I get booted out?
Maybe. You need to be invited back in.
Yeah, I might have to be re-invited. Maybe I stepped on a toe or two. Or yes, go ahead, Chipo.
No, I was just saying thank you.
You're welcome.
So I didn't hit enter, so that's why.
Yeah, I don't have anything else. Any questions for me outside of the co-op space, or anything about experiences or challenges, or what are some of the challenges that y'all are having?
So I will share. I don't know if it's a challenge that we're having right now, but I think it is looming across a lot of our folks we are really focused on being supportive and of Black folks. And in this current political time, there is some concern among our members about, do we have that kind of outward expression of who it is that we are meant to be supporting, that we are focusing on Black folks who identify as Black, and or do we pull that language back because the environment is shifting? And so I'm not necessarily, I'm of the opinion that we are doing the work that we're doing for the people that we're doing it, and there's no reason to change how we say what we say. However, if there is a reason, I would love to hear what thoughts are on that. Like, I just am not trying to be under, in the shadows, sneaking around with what we're doing.
So some of the information that I've gotten this week that's been shared was that they were on a nonprofit or foundation call, and that the foundations were already under the pressure of don't put equity in your grants. Remove that from your language. And so, I I don't feel like I still feel like let's be unapologetic in the way that we're moving and our missions, but then we also may have to accept that the consequences of that when it comes to funding and funding access. And so we may have to be even more vigilant into where and who we go to for funding, because it's we we see so many times that things are spoken to or intentional for different groups, but it seems like when we speak it and the intentionality is for our group, it's problematic. And so it's like it's really gonna come down to, and I think it's gonna be important. That's where it's gonna be important to get in these other spaces and really see how people are tackling and dealing with that. There's a way to say equity without saying the word equity,
Yeah.
and so do we have to wordsmith our way in order to get our way? You understand what I'm saying?
So this is really good, and I appreciate that, because there is, and in like my work day, I'm concerned with making sure that results don't vary across this characteristics and people's identities, right? So that's like equity for real. But in this specific context of the co-op, we are focused on the financial independence of Black folks and their wellness and wholeness through shared and cooperative economics. Like, that is what we are about. And so for me, in that context, I don't want to shift the language at all. Yeah. And I recognize that we are also in a place and time where we, as the members and governance, need to be aware, of how much of our personal information is out there about what it is that we're doing and how folks can get at us. And we're in rural communities in Minnesota. So yeah, folks will know that I am who I am. So it's just figuring, like I said, I'm not concerned about it, because these processes have never been about ensuring the thriving and flourishing of my community. So we want to focus on us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I think too is like a way to also reach the individuals is being very specific and targeted in your marketing and outreach. Where are you reaching those folks at? How are you reaching them? And then is even though your message is targeted at Black and brown communities or Black folks or ADOS folks, how do you reach them? How do you connect with them? How do you get the information in front of their eyes, in their ears, and to come off their lips and into their hands so that they can like put it to use? So is like I would think of looking at being very specific in my marketing and my outreach and connections. Is it at the Black church? Is it at, you know, gathering or networking events? Is it direct mailings and different things like that? And again, I think Minnesota, with its progressive mindset, which to me sometimes can be challenging, because I feel like sometimes it can do more damage than good sometimes with that Minnesota nice and not dealing with things head on in conflict. Um, I'm in Minnesota, but I'm not from Minnesota. So
Yeah.
it's, so I've seen some of those dynamics, but I think, you know, there's room to be strategic. And I mean, and this is a conversation I don't think you should have to even engage with by your, but who are the other players out there? And just like you all were talking about as a cohort, you know, where is that community of folks that's doing and reaching and wanting to connect and change the lives of the same demographic that you're reaching out to? And then is, how do we come up with this plan? What is our plan of engagement? Or is there a change? Or is it going to be a change based on geography and geospatial location? Is it because you're in rural areas? Could it become more challenging? Or, you know, so it depends. It may come down to how state and local governments choose to deal with these new DEI mandates or threats and changes, et cetera.
Right. Thank you so much for just entertaining this conversation. I think it's important for all of us to be aware of the conditions, and at the same time, the study that our collective began with around safety and belonging in rural communities as Black folks, it indicated to us that small business ownership removed or reduced, at least significantly, the level of negative racially discriminatory interactions that we face. And so being able to underline what we learned and then pivot towards ensuring that more of us more often have that independence financially to remove ourselves from threat in the broader white community and still get to live where we want to live and in the geographies that we want, I think is important. So I appreciate this conversation. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? And
Um,
Nikuli, I know you all have like just like reflection session. I don't know if we've like transcended into it or go ahead, Chibo.
I think, Chief, I see a question. I wonder if you could put it in the chat for Gary, if that's okay for now.
I will do. Yes, I will
Yeah.
do.
I'm just wondering if, because I know, you know, different folks show up in different ways, just give space for some small groups for people to reflect to before we go into break. So I'm going to pass it to Liana. But yeah, so I think we're gonna, if that's okay with time, I'm sorry, y'all. Gary, you're a wealth of knowledge, and I think we need to bring you back in some capacity. So we'll talk about that too. But I'm going to pass it to Liana for now.
Thanks, Nicole. So as we're approaching kind of our longer break, did want to just hold some space for people to talk in small groups for maybe the next 5 minutes, and then we'll break for our longer break. So I think, I mean, a lot of questions have come up. We've talked about building trust. We've talked about just like what are the opportunities that we have, like what opportunities do we have amongst each other to build these connections, all those things, like I feel like are fair. I don't really want to, I feel like a lot has already come up that I think we can just continue into the small groups. So I'm just gonna put us in groups, just kind of have organic conversation at this point, and then we'll come back and break for our longer break here. So let me just get those set up. And there'll be probably groups of like 2 to 3 people just to keep it smaller. So feel free to join. I'm gonna open them shortly. All right, let me make sure. All right, so just open the rooms. We'll just take about the next 5 minutes just to talk to each other. So you should get those invites now to join a room. And then I'll bring y'all back at the 45. Thank you, everyone. Jackie, are you able to join a room? And Akatra? If not, I'll move people around. Okay, I'm gonna move. Okay, great. And then Jackie, are you able to join a room? If not, I can move Monica. Hi, Monica. So I saw that you were assigned with someone, but they didn't join, so I might move you to another room. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Oh, it looks like Jackie just joined, so you should be able to join that same room if you're able to do that.
I don't think I can go back.
You can't. Okay, because it says you're still invited to that room, so you should be able to click on, do you see the icon breakout rooms at the bottom of your screen?
No.
Okay, let me see.
Oh, I got it.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Thank you. Welcome, Alexa. Thank you for being here. We're gonna get started just so we can continue moving on. Welcome, Electra. I'm just gonna briefly introduce her before we get started. So Electra Skurzadlewski, am I saying that right? Yes, is the Director of Shared Ownership at the Minnesota Consortium of Community Developers, MCCD, where she leads community wealth building, programs, and lending. In this role, she works with BIPOC and low wealth communities to achieve collective self-determination, advance racial justice and economic democracy, and foster sustainable development by owning and controlling the places where they live and labor. Prior to joining MCCD, Electra was the program manager for the Cooperative Development Foundation, supporting a portfolio of programs to empower the next generation of cooperators, improve social and economic conditions in historically underserved areas, and drive lasting change through shared ownership. With a career spanning over 2 decades across financial services, government, nonprofits, foundations, and economic development, Electra is a seasoned strategist and developer adept at translating complex concepts into actionable plans. Her expertise lies in building consensus and implementing innovative strategies that address multifaceted challenges within diverse organizational contexts and mission areas. Welcome, Electra. Excited to have you. And I will pass it over to you. Thank you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much, Leanna. I certainly hope that everybody enjoyed the morning sessions and that you had a wonderful break. We're going to spend some time together, but making sure that the pacing is appropriate for where the group is at is important to me. So if you need me to kind of slow down or, to speed up in some areas where you're like, yo, you're killing a point right here, we got you. Feel free to come in the chat or off mute and let me know how you're feeling. So I'll tell you a little bit about who MCCD is and how we work really closely with Nexus and why I'm so glad to be a part of the programming today. Also, just a weird note, sometimes my PowerPoint has a mind of its own and it might advance slides when I'm not ready. So we're having grace for each other today. All right. And let me pull this down because I might be blocking y'all's view. So the Minnesota Consortium of Community Developers just celebrated its 35th anniversary in the fall. We are a statewide organization whose membership is comprised of nonprofit affordable housing and economic development organizations, some of whom are community development financial institutions like we are. And for those of you who may not be familiar with what a community development financial institution is, our types of, there are actually 6 types of CDFIs, but we are a nonprofit loan fund. So we were created and designed in the spirit to get at the kind of missing middle, right? The folks that were historically locked out of access to capital opportunities and were subject to racial and social discrimination in their ability to get their financial needs met in the commercial banking markets. So we work with entrepreneurial groups and entrepreneurs just like yourselves to really get to the heart of what it is that they're trying to accomplish, because we believe that community development really is a tool for advancing racial and economic justice. And we do that by making sure that we're working with our partners in community to leverage and steward the resources, whether those are people networks, advocacy levers, or getting capital into the hands of projects that have tremendous potential. So today we're going to go over a few introductions and some housekeeping items. We'll talk about the session's objectives, and we're going to get into exploring feasibility and invite you to have some conversation. We'll cover some time for Q&A, and then we'll talk a little bit about what comes next after this session if you feel like you're ready to get busy. Okay. So before I go on to that, I wanted to talk just a little bit about the kind of 4 core areas of our work. So in a lot of ways, this is the lens that I'm bringing to this presentation. As a consortium and a nonprofit organization ourselves, our areas of work really focus on small business development across a spectrum of ownership models and structures. We also engage in that kind of capital access and lending capability, where we're really looking at what is it going to take for folks to get their financial or monetary needs met in order to make their project go. So some of this is about getting you on a pathway to financing readiness, because we know that it takes currency to kind of make things flow. We also engage in policy and advocacy. So one of the programs that I'm leading, the Shared Ownership Loan Fund, is a complement to the Shared Ownership Center's local fund, by providing debt financing for projects. And that really came together because of working in community with partners who understood that the primary barriers for making shared ownership enterprises work was a lack of access to technical assistance, as well as the lack of access to capital. So we have a loan product that is designed to be supportive of this type of framework, where there's more than one person who owns, controls, operates, and is affected and impacted by the business. So in our session today, we're going to think about feasibility a little bit differently than some of the ways you might commonly see it presented. There are quite a lot of similarities of the core components that you need to know, but we're gonna talk about it a little bit different. So we're going to consider enterprises as social constructs and think a little bit about how there are some common assumptions that are associated with different forms of enterprise, and dig in a little bit to what some of the common assumptions are around these types of enterprises. And I understand that there are various ones in the group today. So we're going to differentiate feasibility studies from business plans. Brother Gary may have given you a little bit of background on that, so we'll dive in a little bit more. We'll highlight some of the key things to consider when exploring readiness to conduct a feasibility study and some of the things that might come up for you all as a group when you're thinking about whether or not you want to move this work forward. We'll clarify some of the approaches and resources that you might be able to tap into in your own home communities if you're outside of Minnesota, and certainly some of the Minnesota partners that we work with. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you're feeling about this. You know, things that are structured and rigid don't work for every group, and we want you to understand that approaching things like feasibility and business planning is really about fit in your unique context in the work. All right. So I really want to know who's in the space. I won't ask you to tell me a whole lot about who you are, but I would invite you to kind of come off mic. And Leanna, I'm going to ask for your assistance. Really, tell me your name. Tell me the group that you're a part of. And what's one question that you're holding about the challenges that your enterprise idea might face? Not everybody.
Unmuted. So Baby Chipo, you could start us off.
Sure. My name is Chipo Nyambuya. I'm with WisConnect. We're a licensed cooperative holding company based in Chicago, and we have subsidiary. It's Pan-African women, and then global majority women. But based on the foundation of Pan-African women. So I'm currently in Liberia, and so I oversee Liberia. Our third partner, there are three of us founding, and our third partner is in Brazil, and then I also oversee our work in Vietnam. And our issue is because our founder has worked in the co-op space. She's a lawyer by trade, as am I. She's worked in the co-op space for, going on 20 years now. And I'm new to it. For me, it's 5 years. It's 5 years in, after kind of nibbling around different elements of community development, and community development, workforce development. So our main issue is, again, is around the reason why we structured and founded WisConnect, which is, Black women, #1 entrepreneurs, and #1 in educational achievement, and the least invested in when it comes to entrepreneurship and business. And so we are encountering, the way we're doing our financing, it's for the cooperative, and then it's for the holding, for the holding company. And so it is, it's the question is around, Gary, kind of, where we left off is having people understand, our structure, and to really see the value in, in our structure, because there's so much behind why people don't see it and don't get it, including our people. And for me, that's the most frustrating part.
Yeah, I hear you. Thank you for sharing. It's wonderful to meet you, Chipo.
Can I share next?
Please.
Hey, my name is Venetia, and I am our co-op is called Women on Wednesday Coaching and Consulting Services. And our primary focus is to support women and youth on their journey to reconnect them back to their purpose, personally and professionally, through coaching. Obviously, we provide support group coaching, one-on-one coaching. We also do workshops and events. And everything is rooted in holistic wellness practices. And the biggest question that's coming up for us is like, I'm really good at networking and connecting and asking for money. Like, I don't, in very unconventional ways. Like, I'm like, hey, I have this event coming up. I need some money. Like, I'm okay with like calling people up, emailing folks, proposing, all that good stuff. But I'm only getting like a little bit here and there. And I'm trying to get to the point where I build a consistent, like, we've also just built membership, so our members are all paying contributions, and then they're going to be paying for one-on-one coaching, and that's not required, but it's a choice, right? To be a member, you get the discounted services to use our in-house coaches to provide the one-on-one coaching, but that's not making us enough money. So I'm like, how do we ask for money? And I want to stay away from loans. Like, I'm really afraid of like going the loan route. I want to just work with grants and sponsorships and stuff like that. So like I said, I've been getting some money. I've been getting even sponsored spaces to do our workshops and events and stuff because we don't have our own space. But my goal ultimately is to have like a brick and mortar or like a building where we can develop a wellness center where our members can come in and even do like uh co-working, you know, using our space to work on their own projects and stuff. Like, that's my future goal. But like, as of now, like while we're building up, I'm like, we need money to run things. And I have like an annual projection budget that I kind of built up. And I'm like, it's a lot of money that I need to get things going. But I'm like, the little bit that we have is contributing to the small things. But it's like, I want to get to the point where we can start getting residual income.
Mhm. Okay. All right. I hear you. I hear you. Thank you, Venetia.
Can I call on Mudluck Pottery? Keegan, would you like to introduce your group?
Sure.
Thank
My name is Keegan Zavi. I'm the engagement director of Mudluck Pottery. It's a ceramic studio, and we also offer workshops and other arts practices. We are 3 artists who decided to do this together. So we have, we share governance and we share responsibilities. And I guess I can echo what other people are saying. We are currently renting a space. We're bursting at the seams and are looking to acquire our own, space that we own. And also how to get more money in, how to get more capital. So we're here because we know a lot about what we don't want to be, what we don't want to do. And so we're here to be inspired and learn from everybody here about what this can be and where we can grow.
Love hearing that. Thank you so much. It's great to meet you, Keegan.
Likewise.
Branch Out and Bloom. Would you all like to go next, please?
Hello, everyone. I can speak for us. My name is Shanaea Dungy, and Branch Out and Bloom is a cooperative with 2 of my sisters, Gina Holiday and Lauren Branch, who are also on the call. And our cooperative is around building respite and space for Black parents and families of students to have alternatives to education, and specifically parts of education that are no longer held within our public schools anymore, around like home ec and basic living skills, life skills. And our question as we're thinking about like what space makes sense, especially when we talk about respite away from like the day-to-day. When you talk about feasibility studies, acquiring land, the things that you need to think about when you acquire land. So like what all can be built on the land, and what studies do you need to do before you even acquire the land are some of the questions that we've kind of been thinking about.
That's big, important work. Thank you so much for leaning into
Thank you.
how we fortify our families. It's wonderful to meet you, Shania, and others.
You as well.
Onyx Collective, you mind going next, please?
Yeah, Victoria McWayne Creek. Nice to meet you, Electra. I think Jackie is on today as well. We're missing one of our other fellowship members, who happens to be Jackie's mom, Heather. And we are, Onyx Collective is really meant to help. We were founded to help enable Black people who live, learn, and work in rural, predominantly white Minnesota, to provide ourselves with opportunities for wholeness and healing. And so we are looking to make sure that we are able to support one another, to participate fully in our communities, to prosper and live into our potential. And we are moving very slowly in our process, under these 7 principles of cooperative economics, because part of what we have found as a result of a study that we did last year to figure out what our cooperative was going to be about, that in order to feel safe and included, we need more intentional spaces that are solely separated and are about us in our communities, because there are no places. There's no Black church here. There's none of that. So we are coming together slowly around this idea of coordinating together to ensure that financial independence is something that we can all achieve and support each other in doing, because that eliminates or or significantly reduces the amount of engagement we have with white folks that can be real negative and hurtful and harmful. So being financially independent gives us more power to determine how and where we will be and in what spaces we will choose to show up in, because we are supporting one another. So we're really in the early stages of defining, and I'm not sure if there is a specific question around all of that, other than we've conducted a study. We want to use that to inform us and also really live into the principles. So whatever guidance is helpful.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, we're sending you lots of love and strength in rural Minnesota. And our program is statewide, so know that you have support. We will come to where you are if you need, you need somebody to be an ideation partner. So it's wonderful to meet you.
Are we just introducing our cooperatives right now in our things?
Yes,
Yeah.
Sorry, y'all. So Mother Art is a collective that curates dream mapping sessions, events, and wellness spaces for Black women who are mothers, who identify as like artists and entrepreneurs. We aim to cultivate sisterhood, economic freedom, transparency, a heart first approach, and wellness accountability. So we really want to resource mothers, Black mothers specifically, who are artists and entrepreneurs, and really making sure that they are taking care of themselves and finding balance in all that they want to do, and like really actualizing their dreams, as far as like art or their business. So yeah.
Good. It's so wonderful to hear all about your work. Thank you for sharing, Shay.
Roots and Resilience Institute. May you share next, please?
Hello, I'm Kat. I thought Scarlett was on today, but I don't think she is. We are Roots and Resilience. We are in the very, very beginning stages, kind of like Victoria. We are here to just get as much information as possible so that we can start our co-op. We are working on a co-op of educators and trainers to go into Black communities and educate on, financial literacy, mental health, physical health, just the whole well-being. And then also we have talked about going into the corporate workspaces where it's, predominantly white men, and basically making our presence known and training them on the the hurt that has come from their ancestors, and then how we can all move forward together. So,
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Kat. I'm looking forward to, seeing how your idea comes to life.
thank you.
Our journey home. Cynthia, do you mind sharing next, please? If you're available. Maybe community healing services.
Sure, I'll take it, Monica. We're a 501c3 established to provide supportive housing and therapeutic housing to the homeless. And we're still in the initial startup phase, this first 2 years, moving slowly. We've only received a couple of small grants, and we're in the process of establishing some network services for mental health and using alternative medicines, not traditional. And also in the process of trying to acquire property to operate out of. So, and that's taken some time.
Mhm. Yeah, but the work is good work. So thank you so much, Charlotte.
You're welcome. Thank you. My pleasure.
Mhm.
Cynthia, are you there? If not, I think that's everyone for now. We do have another group, BWINH, based in New Hampshire, that their work is a Black femme-led nonprofit committed to combating racism, sexism, and gender discrimination in New Hampshire and nearby states. And they're building a resilient and supportive network for Black communities in New Hampshire and the surrounding areas. So that's another group as well.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, it is such a joy to be in community with you all today. So I just really thank you for being here, and thank you for making the investment with your time to really learn about how to take your ideas further. I may need some support monitoring the chat. I'm telling you, this computer is like a little funky. So again, if you need me to stop or pause, like it is okay to interrupt. That's helpful to me. Okay. So let me see if I can get this going forward. All right. So one of the most truly valuable insights a mentor ever shared with me was to really think about all forms of enterprise as social constructs. And this perspective really shifted so much for me at a time when I really needed to think differently about the types of businesses that I was involved with and supporting, and where I wanted to take the next season of my career. So I'd really like folks to come off mic or drop it in the chat to share a little bit about what their understanding or what you've been taught about the meaning of a social construct. So we can get into a little bit about why that's relevant here.
Well, when I
Hello?
think about social construction, I really do think about the fact that supposedly we have decided that this thing has this meaning, and therefore it is of value or means whatever it is that we've decided together that it is. So race, while we didn't all decide that it was a thing, it is a thing that is impactful, and we made it up, is how I see it.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much.
Was that Victoria? Hello?
Yes.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Not as eloquently though.
Yeah, that was very good. That was very good. One of the definitions, and again, you can take definitions to mean what they mean, because that's what we're all about here, is really when I think about like what a social construct is all about, it's a concept or a practice that is created and sustained by a society, right? So things that are thrust upon us or a group, that may not be originating from any natural or inherent source, but are constructed through shared assumptions, often implicitly upheld by its members. So folks may not even have a lot of clarity about why they believe what they believe, where those ideas came from, why it is that they're participating in them, and why it is that they might have a very limited view on what's possible and what's valuable. So when we're thinking about businesses, whether your enterprise is a for-profit enterprise, a not-for-profit enterprise, a social enterprise, cooperatively or collectively owned and operated and governed, at the heart of all of these is that there is a call to really get clear about the assumptions that your group is connecting to who your business wants to be and how you can teach people how to understand your business by getting really clear about what those assumptions are. So in our conversation on feasibility, we're really going to hone in on thinking about assumptions. You'll find that in working with development professionals or other folks that are supportive partners in the kind of entrepreneurial or nonprofit ecosystem, you'll hear the language of assumptions a lot. And really it is they're trying to get the people that they're working with, right? So the members of the cohort here to really get clear about what is it that you think that makes you believe that something's going to work out a certain way, should happen a certain way? What are you basing your understanding or your direction off of? So we're going to get into just a little bit about that and how that plays into a relationship between where you're at now and how you can go a little bit deeper into feasibility. So conventional businesses are businesses that are, for-profit, profit maximizing businesses often have a set of common assumptions that, folks in community who are interacting with business, we kind of come to understand or are conditioned to believe. And sometimes this requires quite a lot of unlearning to get to a place where you can see the world around you a little bit differently. But because these are some of the kind of dominant ideas in the culture in the US, we want to name what they are, because this may be quite antithetical to what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And it's okay in your exercises and in your development to really name that that's not what you're trying to do and be really clear about that. So a lot of conventional businesses see profit as the primary goal. They exist to generate financial profit for their owners or for their shareholders. They might believe that hierarchical structures work best. Really, those businesses are assumed to operate most optimally or effectively with kind of top-down decision makings, or structures where the person in the most advantaged position or privileged position or highest position is assumed to be a person who holds a lot of knowledge or expertise. So much so that that expertise might be viewed as greater than the people who report to that individual. Another common assumption is that competition drives success, and there is a little bit of place to massage that, because obviously when you're operating and there are other organizations that are doing something similar to what you're doing, or they've been operating in the space and serving the clients you want to be serving before you or alongside you, you have to kind of really wrestle with what competition means to you and whether or not it is something that you want to accept and work with, reject, and build a different narrative around, or how exactly your group wants to handle that. But a lot of advisors and developers view competition in a market environment as a kind of a healthy practice that is essential for innovation, for growth, for customer satisfaction, and you are welcome to feel any way you feel about that. I certainly have my own feelings about that. But one of the other kind of common assumptions is that customers come first. So essentially that competition is tied to what is a belief about how best to serve customers, and that if you can best compete for customers' attention, or for your, the person you're serving's attention, you will stand out. There's also an assumption that growth equals success, and that the measure of a business's success is directly tied to expansion, to revenue growth, to market dominance. And these are all ideas that, again, conjures feelings about what they represent and their relationship to power. It's also common in these types of enterprise that employees work for a wage, and that owners and leaders are the people that hold power, and that workers are the primary vehicle to have those services or goods produced for exchange for compensation, really. And that really standardized practices are universal, and that there are such things as best practices. Again, another idea that I think is up for debate. Oh. So not-for-profit enterprises, and again, this could be a nonprofit structure, this could be some forms of social enterprise structures, some other structures that might be tied to solidarity economy type models. But I think that there's some common assumptions of those types of models, really, that they have this mission-driven focus that prioritizes advancing their mission over kind of the financial stability of the organization, and that it's really only ever a struggle to secure funding, external resources, grants, donations, and that funding is the lifeline for the nature of that work to be done, or to be done. And really, I think there's a question of failure to be explored in that area. And failure meaning, is that a failure of the state? Is that a failure of community taking care of one another? Is that a failure of our society conditioning us around problematic ideas? Like, again, there's a lot of room and space for debate about these, and I offer these assumptions to you as an opportunity for you to kind of sit a little bit with how they feel in your body. Impact is often complex to quantify. a lot of funders in particular were asked about the nature of impact and what metrics you're using to really get to the nature of the impact that you're making. And sometimes that can be incredibly difficult because there are always trade-offs between efficiency, resources, and mission critical objectives that really make it so that the people whose needs are being served get their needs met. And sometimes that really spreads folks thin. There's also misconceptions around leadership being altruistic folks. And again, you see that similarity around hierarchy reflecting expertise. So because there is so much kind of variety in the group, we are going to kind of really zoom out a little bit, and some of the language that I'll use will really be around enterprises to capture the dynamicism of all the different projects that you're working on and the various stages of development that you're in. But one thing that I wanted to introduce to the group that may not be familiar to you and may not be something that you've conceptualized as a model for your business, but I think is a really great visualization for how to see the types of businesses that we need more of in the world, the types of enterprises we need more of in the world, is that the cooperative model is one of very few models that are both dual, hybrid, kind of social and economic organizations. And when an enterprise focuses on both the social and economic goals that are tied directly to member community benefit rather than profit maximization or altruism, it really asks us to kind of challenge the common assumptions. What is it that we want to replicate in these environments, and what is it that we want to discard? So we're really going to be thinking today a little bit about how to value, how goodness sakes, about valuing success, how those things are defined and derived. So you'll see on the model of the left, taking what is commonly understood about the cooperative values and principles, and what really gets to the heart of what makes these types of models different is that it is that trifecta of purpose, values, and principles really rooted in being jointly owned and controlled or democratically governed that makes them people-centered enterprises in a way that a lot of types of businesses claim to be. So no enterprise exists in a vacuum, and shared ownership enterprises in particular are built on agreements, shared goals, the relationships between the people involved in the community in which they're situated, and really how trust is built by virtue of those the nature of that exchange, the nature of how those connections are forged, and the nature of the mutuality and reciprocity between those groups. So you have a broader economy, right? So economy that might be your local economy, it might be your regional economy, it might be your state economy, or it might be the kind of national economy. And for, the group in the cohort who has extended their work across boundaries and is reaching into different corners of the world, there's quite a lot of complexities and dynamics as you're thinking about how lots of different forces and influences are exerting pressure and introducing different types of norms on your business. And then we have the kind of broader environment, right? And there's social aspects of that environment. There's cultural aspects that are tied between both environment and society. And there are certainly ecological considerations for how our businesses or enterprises interact with the larger environment, and whether or not that's happening in regenerative ways or extractive ways, in ways that we might need to question to make sure that we're not doing things we don't want to be doing. So we'll pause shortly after this, but I wanted to kind of introduce another kind of model that really helps us think about how we're transitioning from thinking about enterprise as social constructs to what are some of the kind of constructed components of coming together to build an enterprise. You'll see it kind of spans from commerciality, from the generation of sustainable economic value for current or future members through some sort of enterprise operation, to how your enterprise might be involved in shaping markets, creating, maintaining, shaping sustainable or competitive markets for goods or services that you wish to bring to life. Member relationships or relationships intra-community, those ones are very, very closely linked. Building and maintaining those meaningful relationships with members inside the organization, as well as, you know, who you're in relationship with in the broader community and how those folks are directly connected to the folks who may be the user members of your organization. Thinking about decision makers or stakeholders as part of a mutually beneficial and sustainable ecosystem, and really having the type of mindset that says, I'm stepping up to kind of act ethically, sustainably, and consistent with mutual and cooperative values. So this type of framing, I think, takes so much of what you've been exploring in the fellowship so far and helps you understand how those different things are connected to the work that you'll be doing as you dive into and explore feasibility a little more. And we're going to take a pause for just a moment, and I invite you to kind of come off mic or drop in the chat, you know, what thoughts or feelings or questions are kind of coming up for you as you're hearing that type of perspective on enterprise as a social construct that essentially you make it mean what you want it to mean, and it becomes a second layer of what needs to be accomplished to help people understand what assumptions you're making about your own business or enterprise.
In the chat, Cynthia put that is foreseeable.
Thank you. Okay.
Also in the chat, Nisha just put, I think it's important to align yourself so you walk it like you talk it.
That's right. That's right.
Can I just elaborate a little bit on what I said, y'all?
Please.
Because the walking like you talking thing is big for me. Like 2024 taught me, like, girl, you need to start following through with what you say so that it aligns. And it's to the point where, like, I'm a mom. I wear all these different hats and all these different roles, and like I look at all these different aspects of my life, and I'm like, entrepreneurship. This is why I said when Mr. Gary was speaking that entrepreneurship forces you to see yourself in ways that you just don't look at yourself on an average day. Like you have to really think about some of the decisions you have to make in your business. And if it's something that you're birthing that you're like passionate about, you have to ask yourself, why am I so passionate about this? Like, where does this come from? What's motivating me? What's behind that? And behind that is a bunch of stuff that you don't look at yourself, like you're not looking at on a regular average day. So I'm learning that it's important for me to not only just say, I want to start a business. It's like, but why? And we talk about that, right? People in motivational spaces will talk about, remember your why. Don't forget your why. But it's so much deeper than that. And I see it show up in my motherhood. I see it show up in my friendships, my platonic ones, my intimate ones, family relationships, co-working spaces. I'm just like, I need to learn how to align myself enough so that I'm walking what I say. And that's more to me, that's like being your own brand, or you said too, being your own enterprise. Like we are enterprises that, like, if I'm putting my business out there that this is what it's about, and I just need to look like, I need to be a testimony of that. I don't know how else to put it in words, but it's like I need to be showing up in alignment with what I'm trying to put out there in the world as far as my business. That's just kind of how I'm looking at it.
It's a practice for sure, for sure.
Victoria, you had your hand raised.
So I'm not sure if I got your question, but I'm not sure what I am thinking when I see, I mean, I'm seeing what is a feasibility study here. So I'm just gonna go with that right now because that's what's
Okay.
at the top of my head.
Yeah.
And recognizing that just because I think something is needed and because I think I know what might address that need does not equate a feasibility study in that have is it something that's viable and that is necessary and wanted and would be supported and how so. And so when I think of it, of this work in that way, is why we backed up from, Onyx Collective. We incorporated last year, but we had zero out there as to what it was we were going to do because we didn't know what was needed, but we knew something was necessary to
Right.
support Black folks in and around the rural communities that we all live in. And so we went back to understand what is happening on the ground with us, what we are experiencing, and what we as a group would like to see happen. And from there, move outward.
Very nice articulation to both of you. One of the things that I will say is that one of the reasons I like starting with groups on thinking about enterprises as social constructs is because investing in building group cohesion and taking your time and understanding that that's not a one-time affair, right? That is going to be a commitment that you are making to one another for the life of your work together. And it is really among the most critical pre-development aspects, really of feasibility. So that is, in my view, how they're linked. I've worked with a number of different clients that believed that they had done the work to have shared vision and shared purpose, but they had not done work individually or together to unlearn some of the competitive, hierarchical thinking that many of us inherit or are conditioned with, and pick up along our lifetime working in conventionally structured businesses. And it really is that conditioning that makes it harder for groups to learn how to question constructively, to collaborate even when tensions rise, and to collaborate in healthy ways, and to understand that when someone raises a question about an assumption that we hold, that may not be an attack, and likely it isn't. So because shared ownership enterprises and enterprises that might be like self-directed nonprofits or other forms of solidarity economy models, often by design redistribute power and offer every member a voice and decision making, it's important to realize that this doesn't always come naturally. So when a group moves toward feasibility studying, it's really important to ask ourselves, are we ready? But the first part of answering that question is, what is it? Like, what is it? How deep do we have to go? How are we going to get everybody aligned? Um, is there someone who's going to lead? Are there others that are going to follow? And really, some of those dynamics can really undermine even the best ideas if they're not addressed early and often. So creating, spaces for communication and trust building and really practicing and building your muscles around shared decision making, it really isn't just a nice to have, it is essential if you're building an enterprise with other folks, right? So feasibility isn't just about whether or not the enterprise can work in the market, right? Or in an exchange place, but really about whether or not the groups can challenge these ingrained patterns and build equitable relationships that will allow them to work together to bring their vision to life, right? And that's often a part that is missing when people are thinking about feasibilities. So before we get into like giving you kind of a definition of it, I'm really curious. Is there anybody, some folks mentioned that they had engaged in some studies properly, maybe for a different type of enterprise, your shared ownership enterprise, or not-for-profit entity. Can you share a little bit about your experience if you did do that work?
I don't know if my work is qualifies, but I've done a lot of feasibility studies in IT, but it's I don't know if that's applicable.
It very much is. I mean, because
Oh,
feasibility studies kind of across a wide range of different types of models and purposes often have a lot of the same kind of component parts. And often what is less obvious to folks or not entirely encouraged is that you get to design the nature of your feasibility study in a way that aligns with the assumptions that you want it to address. So if you have experience, tell us a little bit about how that was for you.
well, it's pretty much a tried and true formula. You go in, the client is telling you what their problems are, what they're trying to achieve. There's a lot they don't know. You usually go in and you want to talk to the stakeholders, find out what input they have as far as, most people have an idea of something that they want, and they can tell you what the problems are. You find out if they've gone through any of these processes with other vendors before you, if there's some work that you can review. You want to find out what documentations they have available for you to review. Um, then you want to get an idea of their timeline and budget, resources available, what type of subject matter experts they have available to take part in the project and give you feedback. It has to be interactive. They have to do their part, reviewing your deliverables and approving them on time. That can slow things down. Also, sometimes you don't know what you're going to run into with systems. Some systems are legacy systems. They're old. Sometimes they're disparate. Some people are using Excel sheets in one department and something else in another department, and you have to interview all of the stakeholders to find out what do they absolutely need, what can be jettisoned, and what is a nice to have. And then you also want to look at their rules and regulations and statutes that govern how they operate so that whatever you're doing a feasibility study on, it aligns with how they have to operate. Um, Also, you want to look at how are other people doing it so you don't reinvent the wheel. If there's someone else doing it and they're having great results, you want to learn from that. You also want to learn from the mistakes of others, so you don't want to waste time making the same mistakes. So you don't want to do lessons learned in a retrospective. And then you want to synthesize and gather all your information and do a recommendation report, a feasibility report and recommendation. And usually the client picks from that report of recommendations a specific one or two specific recommendations that they might want to follow. And then you take that and you go back and do the cost and risk. You want to find out what their risks are in any particular path that they take and put down some risk mitigation strategies for them. You also want to do cost and budget and timeline and training. There's always organizational change management that comes into play because new systems, new ways of doing things require a new mindset. So you have to plan out the training so that they're ready to use the system. It doesn't make any sense to give people something new to use and they don't know how to use it. The rate of adoption is almost failure at that point. So, you do that, and then you present the the findings to the leadership who's, the leadership has been actively involved from day one. They have to be involved. They have to be committed. They have to have some time committed to the entire project from beginning to end, or else it fails. You present that to them and they sign off and project's over.
Hey, listen. Charlotte knows what Charlotte is talking about. Let's give Charlotte some love for helping us understand what a feasibility study is. Very good, very good. All right. So I'll back up a little bit. Drop in the chat if you think that there is a meaningful difference between a feasibility and a business plan. And I know I just gave you a sneak preview because you saw it on the slide, but drop a yes, a no, or an I don't know in the chat. You can even answer from what your perspective was kind of before you came into today's session. Because I will tell you that, it's a common question. Is there a meaningful difference between what they are?
In the chat, just Lauren said broke it down, speaking to Miss Charlotte's answer. And then they're saying yes, yes, absolutely, yes, yes. That's from Cynthia, Lauren, Charlotte, and Chico.
Very good. All right. So yes, you are absolutely right, folks. There is a difference between a feasibility study and a business plan. And we'll talk a little bit about how they're different and how they are very similar. But essentially, they really differ in purpose, focus, nature, timing, audience, and outcome. What do they enable you to do? So a feasibility study really serves as the general preliminary exploration of the questions of the viability of the business idea. And that viability of the business idea piece is really what we're talking about around your assumptions, right? To determine whether a business idea is practical and likely to succeed. An idea may not necessarily be all that practical, but that doesn't necessarily exclude it from being something that can succeed. But really, the focus is to really try to help you evaluate whether that idea is, a green go, or it's a red no go, a yellow light, hold on, we got to do some more work. But really, by analyzing those kind of critical factors, though so many that Charlotte named, and testing the assumptions, right? What you think you want to have happen, what you think is going to happen, what exactly you're pursuing and why it is that you want it to go that way. It allows that type of tool to also open up those factors and assumptions to external perspectives, where those external perspectives help verify or challenge initial ideas and help collect and present evidence that will help decision makers really determine whether or not that idea is worthwhile. It's used by project decision makers, can in many cases be used by capital partners. If you're working with a debt financing partner, oftentimes they will ask if you've done a feasibility study, or it might serve as a addendum to your business plan. Prospective partners who want to better understand whether or not they kind of want to work with you, if they want to rock with you, to what extent, because they're like, I didn't understand what you were telling me, but now I'm kind of getting it. It also can help lead to that decisive, yes, we're going to go ahead with this. No, we're going to spend some more time working on this, shifting different component pieces and different assumptions so that we can get to a better place where we feel better about it. And really, it's the kind of foundation for that business plan. And the nature of it is that it really does provide, or should provide, a more objective analysis of market demand. And I know a lot of folks are like, how can how can a person be objective? Like that's very difficult. And that's one of the reasons why it's difficult to do a feasibility study on your own, and why folks often work with outsiders. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's an analysis really of that market demand, right? If there is the kind of technical environment and skill set to make the enterprise idea work. What financial or monetary resources would make it viable? If we do some projections, does that math really show that the business idea, if these assumptions become true, can sustain the costs around that business idea? And then it's conducted early in the process, right? Before significant resources are invested and commitments are made, and everybody's like, we, got you, we're all in. But that doesn't mean that if you are already further down the road with your group, with your community, that you can't press pause and say, in order to more deeply and thoroughly understand where we're trying to go, we might want to really consider taking a beat and doing a feasibility study. So a business plan, right? It's more of a specific detailed roadmap outlining how the business will operate and achieve its goals. It builds on the findings of the feasibility study, right? So if you're talking about the affirmations and the challenges, the who, what, when, where, how are we going to do all this stuff? And it really shows that the people that invested in doing the feasibility study understand what they're getting into, right? And that their business strategies and kind of operating approach is informed by what they understand about what they're trying to do, where they're trying to do it, how they're trying to do it, for whom, and all of those different aspects. The business plan has a different nature in that, outsiders are not necessarily weighing super heavily on your business plan, but it's really an opportunity for the members of the group themselves to reflect and articulate their vision, what knowledge they have, what, expertise. And I use that like very much like an expertise in whatever way you want that to be expressed. And your commitment to bringing that idea to life. It provides this guide for how the business will execute its mission and how it will grow, and might even give some clues to kind of how that's all going to happen. And it's be created after the feasibility study kind of confirms that idea is worth pursuing and is likely to be viable. And it can be used over the long term as a tool for implementation and growth. We'll also get to a little bit about how these things are similar. Again, the audience is decision makers, capital partners, stakeholders, but also internal teams, right? So those can be, depending on the internal design of your team, whether you have managers or you have other folks that are interacting with different people and responsible for helping make sure that the business's approach and strategy and tactics are well communicated across launch, operating, and scaling the business. It's a really, really good tool for that. And again, it can be, very detailed. It can be a little less detailed, but it often is kind of a very different level of detail from a feasibility plan, because it's focusing on different things. And the outcome is that you get a comprehensive document that really outlines the steps and resources that are needed to achieve those goals. So really, the difference is the feasibility study says, we going forward. The business plan says, how are we going to do it? So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the overlap between the two, right? So what are the commonalities? Is that both of these tools are part of a spectrum of business development. They serve different purposes, but it isn't necessarily that either one of these things is a one and done exercise. Depending on where you're trying to take your enterprise and kind of what different things are coming up in your unique context, this is very much, these are very much tools that are both iterative, because you may need to do them over time for different reasons when you're trying to ask and answer different questions. And while Charlotte did a wonderful job of articulating, like, you can do this, it has this component, this component, this component, and those components are interconnected and feed off of one another, you will find when you're doing this work that it may not and often isn't linear. that you may have to go forward a bit, go back a bit, spend a little bit more time somewhere. You go ahead a little bit, and then you find that, oh, we need to come back to this because we're running into some different information that is asking us to reconsider, to pause, to think, or to make a choice. Again, they have interconnected thinking. So you should be thinking about your feasibility study as the foundational tool for your business plan. But it's also really important to, when you're diving into the work of the business plan, to not leave the feasibility study behind and to know that you did that so that your, operating and execution is informed and kind of grounded in the evidence of the context of your enterprise. Just like Charlotte mentioned, it does need both outsiders and insiders in order to achieve a balanced perspective that doesn't diminish what people believe is possible for this business and why that feels so important, but also balances it with the kind of concrete or more tangible realities of the conditions and environment of the market, business environment, landscape. They're both process-based, you heard that too, and then they both kind of result in a tangible resource. All right, so this definition at the top is a very high level, right? It gives you just a kind of one sentence description of what the feasibility study is. In case you're, carrying this information forward to others in your group, you can help them understand that it is a multi-dimensional tool that really asks how an enterprise is going to operate under a particular set of assumptions. And you might find that there are other aspects of feasibility that you want your study to explore, but these are kind of the 5 main ones. And certainly there are subsections under all of these, and we'll get into that a little bit more, but we're going to move kind of quick here. So the legal feasibility, again, is performed to understand if that proposed plan meets the legal and ethical requirements of what your industry, your field, or your regulatory authority needs operators to understand. The economic, is there a cost benefit analysis that can help us get to the heart of how well or how poorly a project may perform under these set of assumptions. It's the process of validating on the technical feasibility side the resources and capabilities that are necessary in order to take those ideas and make them actionable. Whether those are actionable into informal or formal working systems. Operational feasibility is, again, it's designed to help decision makers understand how well that system might solve the problems that it is intending to solve or are directly a part of its mission. And then scheduling feasibility. Earlier, you heard a bit about timeline. Now, because if this is new to you, you're learning that, oh, this sounds kind of intense. How long does this take? Some of that is context dependent as well. Feasibility studies can really take as short as, 3 months to 3 years. Charlotte, if you have some examples of how long some of the ones that you worked on took, I welcome you to share that with the group.
Most of the companies I worked for were, banks and insurance companies. So, we had some very long feasibility studies that took, 2 years. And then we had the shortest ones were when they were bringing in new technology and they wanted to see the effectiveness, not just the operational effectiveness, but the cost effectiveness of the tool over a specific period of time. And so those were relatively short. But when you talk about going in and changing an existing way of doing business, those were mostly the long ones because people get grooved into doing things. And the longer a person has been in a job or the longer a person has been doing things a certain way, they become challenged and sometimes even threatened just at the thought of change. Change can upend even the best of persons. And so you kind of have to cut that off at the pass by imagining and planning out what are you going to do with the people who are impacted maybe negatively about this planned change. And so I guess if you were to extrapolate that over into what we're trying to do with community, um, you know, there's change that would be happening in the community that we're trying to assist, but there's also change happening in the community who's standing around watching us assist them. Uh, you know, nothing happens in a vacuum.
Right.
So we're trying to help people who are suffering, but there's a whole society who has watched this suffering for a long period of time, and how do they react to trying to lift up the less fortunate? And so you almost have to prepare a message for them to keep them off your back, keep them out at the gate so that they don't come in and try to mess things up for you. You know what I'm saying? You had things like the Tulsa thing, and where certain groups become jealous and angry, and they want to come in and just tear everything up. Well, that happens in companies when you do a feasibility study. That happens in environments when you want to come in and do change. You have people who just don't want change. So organizational change management has to be converted to community change management, I guess.
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. And that was such a, you know, a beautiful and thoughtful articulation of some of the areas where people really need to understand that feasibility isn't just about what's possible. It's about what barriers and obstacles and challenges are going to come up. And it doesn't say that you can only go forward if you avoid those things, but it says you need to know about what those are so that you can have contingencies and plans that said, if this set of assumptions tries to interrupt our ability to execute our idea, what are we going to do?
Yep.
How are we going to do it? Right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Any other questions in the chat? Comments? Looks like so.
In the chat, I think from a little while ago, Nisha had said, well, yeah, most of my study comes from the data I collect in my Google Forms, intakes, exit surveys, etc. that supports conveying the needs to help sustain the mission. And then also said change can be scary. And then Monica was just echoing, thank you, Mom, for saying this. Thank you, for sharing, Charlotte, so much wisdom. And lastly, Nisha was saying this is part of entrepreneurship, but this is the part of entrepreneurship I was speaking on earlier, but it's important to face.
That's so true. That is so true. And what is so wonderful about the work that so many of you may already be doing is that the data that you're collecting, the stories that are being told to you about demand, about need, about the real issues that people are running up against, and they are saying that there is no solution for this right now. We need something more. That is all data that can help inform your feasibility study, right? So like hang on to that stuff. That stuff is so valuable. And you will see how this type of exercise can really put that information to work. So why would you want to do this? You've already heard a little bit about this. So remember, again, like, yeah, developing any new venture is difficult. Taking a project from initial idea to an operational stage is tough, and it's a time-consuming effort. And a solid feasibility study will really help you get really clear about what that timeline is, what those resources needed to do it are, and really can be a tool to help you avoid running into problems that you didn't anticipate that could have been surfaced before. A lot of ideas kind of regardless of entity type or structure, don't make it. And it can be really heartbreaking and discouraging when an idea, gets shut down, or you're told, you need to spend some more time on this or go back to the drawing board. But in the operational stage, like there is an enormously high rate of failure. And I don't say this to you all to, be negative about it, but to really say is that there are a lot of folks, just like Charlotte said, that don't want us to win, that don't want us to succeed, don't want us to heal ourselves and each other. And sometimes that turnaround between having a green light to get started and where you start bumping up against some resistance and real problems, that stuff can happen so fast, right? So many businesses run into troubles even within 6 months of operating. So a feasibility study really gives the focus to the project and outlines alternatives, right? It also helps you narrow business alternatives, right? What else could we do? Maybe we initially thought we were going to do it like this, but we could also have this as plan B, plan C, plan D, etc. It'll surface some of those new opportunities throughout the investigative process and might bring to light some things that are really closely aligned to what it is you want to do, but says, the market is a little bit narrow here. The opportunities are a little bit more narrow, challenging here, but there's a sweet spot of opportunity over here. It helps you identify the reasons not to proceed, enhances your probability of success, provides that decision-making information, and really can help increase investment in the enterprise if you're working with some folks who know what they're doing. And the business it shows that the business idea was thoroughly investigated, looked at from kind of lots of different angles, and will demonstrate what angles those were and who were some of the folks that were doing that objective analysis, and really can be a valuable tool in getting the resources that you need. So when do we need it? You heard Charlotte talk a little bit about some of their experience with, entering a new market, launching a major shift initiative or change initiative in the business. So it very much could be in the earliest stages of, ideating on a new enterprise venture. It could be when maybe your enterprise wants to buy a competitor or wants to merge with somebody. Considering changes or where and how you want to invest as you're executing your work, when you're trying to understand the risks and rewards, when you're adding new product lines or services or trying to serve new markets, like new customer segments, it helps assess the potential for success of that proposed project, right? So when to carry it out, right? You're trying to get some money, you're trying to attract equity investment. Very good time to work on building consensus around whether or not you want to go forward with a feasibility assessment. You want to change the enterprise location, you want to grow, you want to shift in some way, and you want to plan to do something, right? You want to buy something, you want to implement something that'll change the way that your enterprise operates and functions. So I hear this all the time. This is intense. My goodness, I'm overwhelmed. Can we do this ourselves? Well, maybe, perhaps. I'll pause real quick. It looks like there might be some comments in the chat.
Oh, that was Chipo. She just said, I'm sorry, everyone, I have to run caretaking duties call. So
Yeah, we feel you, Chipo. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what's the difference between maybe and perhaps, right? So maybe is a word that really indicates that something is possible. It might be true, where perhaps means, well, it expresses possibility, but also uncertainty. I do not know. So we'll come back to the chat before we go further.
From Chipo, thank you all for holding space for me and each other this week. I appreciate it always.
Very good. Okay. So now, can you do this yourselves, right? They feel intense because they do require such a degree of analysis and decision making, but they're also like a really essential investment in kind of your development, right? So now whether or not your group can conduct the study yourselves depends on a lot of different things. Chief among them is time, right? Like time demands are coming at us from up, down, side to side, everywhere. So it's about your time and your capacity, right? And how those things fit together with your your energy. So it's also quite a lot about your skills and your resources. If you're familiar with doing some of the analysis, fact finding, evaluation that are part of the component parts of a feasibility analysis, then by all means, you might be able to hold that bit. But what I will say is that some groups have the ability to manage large portions of the work around a feasibility study. And if members do have that, like certainly figure out what is the way that the team wants to utilize their ability to do it. But also ask yourself if that level of labor on behalf of the business idea should be compensated. Because like I said, around capacity, we really want to be thoughtful about what we're asking our people to do. And if we have the resources to pay them for their time and energy and expertise. So there are costs associated with doing feasibility, and having serious conversations about ways you want to minimize those costs or how you want to fundraise for this or pool your resources. Those are all important conversations to have and are a part of the earliest conversations you want to have about some of these assumptions, right? Are we assuming we can afford this? Are we assuming we can do it ourselves? What are we really getting into, right? And the thing to remember here is that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You could take aspects of a feasibility study that align with your strengths and abilities, and save or reserve some of the ones where you're running into trouble to working with supportive partners. And I mean, for many folks that are first starting out or are coming from a place where the resources that are most immediately available may be more modest than what is ideal or what they're aiming for, is that the goal doesn't have to be perfection, right? A lender like MCCD that does business development and wants to see us be able to move dollars into projects, we want to see that you took the time to really dig into what it is you're trying to do. And that if we, as partners, who don't also want you to get into circumstances that are not good, healthy, or sustainable for the business, like taking on debt financing when, evidence is pointing to that cash flow, might not be generated at the rate in which you hope, we're going to probe some of these assumptions with you. So can you do it yourself? Maybe, perhaps. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. I'm going to try to pick up the pace just a little bit. So how to do a feasibility study overview. And because we don't have a whole lot of time left together, I don't want you to panic and be like, I need to come away from this weekend knowing what comes next, what we need to do. Following this presentation, I'm going to link up with Nakuli and Leanna and make sure that you all have a more detailed breakdown on some of the component parts that are commonly included in a feasibility study, as well as an RFP template or a request for proposals template, that in the event that you want to hire somebody to do this with you, or you can find access to no-cost technical assistance or business development support in your community, nonprofit development support in your community, you'll have a really good framework to say, this is what our group is talking about that we want included in our feasibility study. And can you give us some bids and help us understand, where we're going? We'll pause real quick to see if there's questions in the chat.
I don't see anything.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So in hearing all you're hearing and having conversations with the others that are involved in your enterprise, you're going to want to have some serious conversations about whether or not you want to proceed with this step. Or if you need to take an incremental approach to get to a place where you're ready to kind of green light it. but also there might be some of that really foundational work we were talking about we need to build more trust together. We need to spend some more time together. I don't really know how so-and-so moves. I don't really know if they're entirely bought into what it is that we're trying to do. Maybe somebody whose expertise or emerging expertise is vital to the project is working on a certification and is still learning something about the field, the industry, the community, the development conditions where you're trying to launch. So spend some time deciding on whether or not it makes sense to proceed. You're going to want to work to define the project together. And that really involves a whole range of, factors, right? What's really involved in what it is that we're trying to do. And so many of you in your introductions had such a really powerful articulation of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and for whom and why, and spend some time kind of defining that project to make sure that what it is that you say the project is something that people can, from their toes to the top of their head, say, yes, that's what we're trying to pursue. And that'll allow you to get real about those group commitments, right? Because some folk might be like, oh, I really do care about, Black maternal health. I really do care about people exiting the justice system and wanting to make sure that they can earn a livelihood for themselves. I really care about getting properties off of the speculative market. I'm down for this. I'm down for this. But when it comes down to this is the scope of the project idea that we're working on, you might find that people want to spend some time massaging that before everybody can get to a full-throated yes. Okay. Understanding what sound decision-making takes, and creating a container and an environment so that folks have the questions answered in a way that gets them to that place where it fits within whatever your decision-making framework is, and meets the norms, the conditions, the community agreements that you have about what make up the component parts about how decision-making takes place in your group, and what makes something a valid decision and something that is a questionable or squishy decision. Deciding who's going to conduct the study. We talked a little bit about, like, can we do it ourselves? Who do we need to reach out to in community that might be firms, consultants, advisors who do this on the regular? Maybe I know somebody and they'll do it on the side, and we just can work out a payment arrangement with them. There are a number of ways to spend some time really digging into who would conduct the study, how much would they charge, what is the scope or the limitations of what they can do for us based on some of those other factors. And then you're going to work together to develop your project assumptions and the components that you want covered in your study. And then often from there, you're in a pretty good spot to reach out to folks and get them to tell you what their work would cost if you're interested in exploring hiring somebody. And if not, to figure out how your team might divide that labor, or might attack as a group, section by section, piece by piece, over a longer timeline. So we'll pause for questions there.
So Nisha has in the chat, I do have a question on how to build a team for temporary projects such as a fundraising campaign. Other than volunteers, who would you have to involve? And then who would you suggest?
So how to build a team for a feasibility study?
Maybe Nisha, if you can come off mute, if you want to explain a little more what you meant by that.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at this from, because this is all new to me, the feasible study, the terminology and the verbiage, I guess, because I feel like naturally I've been kind of like using this guideline unconsciously to like decide whether I want to push a project forward or not. But I'm asking about, like, I said, so to build like for a temporary project. And to me, I need to do like a fundraising campaign for this project, for this initiative that I want to have in July. But I'm like, I've never done a fundraising campaign. Like, I don't know who that consists of. Because I've been trying to do my best with what I have as far as my team and just the people that are around me. But I'm like, we're all kind of learning together. So like, who do you bring to that space to help support you with the fundraising campaign if it's just temporary? Because I wouldn't want these people, I guess, that I'm asking for support on this specific project to be a part of like the entire organization, moving forward. It's just like, I need help with this fundraising campaign. Do I put out an ad and say, hey, I'm trying to fundraise, but I need a lot of people in different spaces to help with making these connections. Like how does that look? I guess I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think that is a really important question, and I'm happy to spend some time talking to folks about that question. What I'll say is we are real short on time today. This has been a really great conversation, but because that's outside of the scope, let's put a pin in that, but make sure that Leanna and Nikuli know that you want to get in touch. And for anybody else who has a similar question, I'm happy to link up with y'all again and we can dive into some of that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course. All right. So these are some of the example components that you could have in a feasibility study. And I don't want you to take these numbers or colors or where they appear on the slide to represent where or how they should appear in your study. Almost always, a study will begin with your executive summary that wraps up all of the kind of why this was undertaken, many of those very high-level details. But when you're thinking about your kind of scope, the assumptions that are falling under any one of these categories, this is a little bit of a menu to get you thinking about some of the things that you might want to be considering, particularly if you have if your project is really motivated about challenging the kind of cultural, social, economic, or environmental conditions that the folks you're serving are operating under, it is really important to include those types of things in a feasibility study, and they are often left out, particularly oftentimes by conventional businesses. So I would encourage you to familiarize yourself with this. And again, one of the follow-up items I'll have for you will be kind of a description or a breakdown that has some prompts that really kind of get into what are some of the assumptions or questions that we need to dive into all this. Some folks may be in a space where they really want to make this practical. I want to take this back to my group. I want to figure out how we're going to do it. And because there was short time today, we didn't want to really get into a whole lot of that, but I want to make sure you get what you need to get. Okay. I'm overwhelmed. Do we really need to do this? Again, this is hard. This is not easy to do, right? This is why the design of the program that you're in is tiered and layered, and it's rolling out and introducing ideas to you so that you have time to really give these new things, ideas, concepts, recommendations for directions, time to breathe, okay? So the question you might be asking yourself is, should we get support? This is kind of tied to what we heard earlier, is like, how, who do I find? How do I get these people aligned with me? How do I tag the right people in at the right time? Should we work with professionals? And the answer to that question is really up to you, and it's really up to your context, and it's really up to kind of what comes up for your group when you're thinking about this. And really, it's up to cost if you want to pay somebody to do it. You might be able to find groups in your community that don't charge. I will make sure that we send over some information, particularly for the Minnesota-based groups, about organizations in the state that can help with feasibility. But bringing on supportive partners can help you take your analysis further. It can help you make sure that you have an outside third party or team of outside third party folks that are testing your assumptions and are reaching more objective conclusions than your group might be able to pull together yourselves, because you're so close to the project, right? Like, you love this project. You want to see this baby get born. And other folks who are not in it as deep as you are can take a comprehensive approach, can turn over the stones, and can get into it, right? Oftentimes, it also accelerates the efficiency and focus of moving this work along. Because like I said, y'all got a lot going on in your lives. right? Like this may not be the only thing that you're working on, and this may not be the only thing that is inviting your attention or drawing your attention. So working with other folks can help take some of that off of you and get really to the credibility of getting folks' attention, right? It provides those customized insights and ultimately leads to a set of recommendations, just like Charlotte recognized earlier in the conversation. And also those recommendations can help the development of risk mitigation strategies. And particularly if your enterprise or venture is an expensive proposition, particularly around real estate. Real estate are some of the most complicated deals that I work on. So whether it's real estate, land acquisition, I particularly, recommend that you all spend some time with the material that you've heard today and the follow-up items that will come to you. And we're gonna write it down there. And I really just want to say thank you so much, for being here and being willing to figure out how it is you're going to bring what you want into being. I want you to know I believe in you. I know the Nexus team believes in you. And, if you have any questions, I don't know if we have any time for that, but I'm sorry about that. I should have timed this out a little bit better.
Thank you, Electra and Gary. This was probably one of my favorite sessions, so I just wanted to say thank you.
And I would like to add that it is well worth it to do these feasibility studies because as you are applying for grants and loans and so forth, even if you want to stay away from loans and you just want to do grants, maybe online fundraising or whatever, you're developing verbiage that shapes your mission, your objectives, your goals, your outcomes, and things like that, because the feasibility study is going to give you some unique insights and phrases that will make your organization kind of pop. So you'll be able to create templates from the outcome of your feasibility study, your data. You'll be able to, and you should be able to pour that into your business plan and update your business plan every year. Like if you join the 8A program with the government, they make you update your business plan every year. It shouldn't be stagnant, because you're always changing. We've been forced to change. I've lost count how many times we've been forced to change because the system is not receptive to how we want to do things. So we have to come up with workarounds that don't offend people, but allow us to move forward to help the people we want to help, even though they don't want to help them. So, it's really well worth it verbiage wise.
It has been such a gift to learn from you, Charlotte, and to have you in the space to share what you know. The one thing I will always encourage you all to do is to never look to one expert, right? Never undervalue the wisdom and the understanding and experience that is right beside you. You would be shocked how much you can learn talking to anybody. So I'm probably not telling you anything that you don't know, but Gary and I are here in community and are happy, to help support you on, your journey, and just love spending time with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Electra. Feel free to put some love in the chat. Gratitude. Thank you so much. Yes, I feel like a lot of things were threads today around like building trust and community and all of that. So very much needed in the time like that we need to slow down and just like knowing it's not going to be linear, but it's cyclical. Like it's going to take the time it needs. So yeah, thank you so much. And you said you would send the slides, correct?
Well, yeah,
Electra?
I'll send the slides and I'll
Thank-
send some other materials that you can circulate to the group.
Thank you. All right, y'all. Well, you're free to take the rest of your day. But again, thank you both so much for joining us. I don't know if Nicole, you want to say anything else before I move into the next bit?
Yeah, no, thank you both. This was really amazing. This is the first time we were doing feasibility in North Star, so I'm really grateful that was with you, Electra, and this morning, Gary, the foundation that you set for us. Yeah, I think it was the most beautifully put way of doing this and so caring and just full of intention. So thank you to you both. And I think the only thing I'll follow up with is from today's conversation, I just heard a lot of questions about specific project needs. So I think what I will offer in talking to Liana and Electra, you said you and Gary are here in community, is maybe some one-on-one TA time that we can help set up with TA providers who would be interested in doing that work. If you all, Electra and Gary, are interested in helping us do that, we can talk more. But yeah, I'm excited about these projects. I'm really happy for the questions that are coming up too. And thank you both for your time and energy that you spent with us today.
Right. I'm gonna drop our post session feedback survey in the chat. You're welcome to take that now or later, but we really do appreciate your feedback. It's helpful as we're, building out the fellowship. And yeah, it's a way for us to also do that work too, being iterative. So we only have a few minutes left, but I would just invite folks, if there's any closing thoughts or reflections you want to put maybe in the chat or come off mute to say. And then I know we had maybe a few announcements that we also might want to share, but can feel free to put any closing reflections in the chat, or come off mute if you'd like.
I think before people hop off, I know today was a lot of information, so if you're gonna take time to really sit with it and maybe put your thoughts about today in the survey, that would be appreciated too. Liana and I are always here too. If you just want to talk through something, we're happy to offer that time. I'm just gonna move into one announcement before people hop off about the next session. So today was heavy. Next session will be a little lighter. Every February, we do a virtual cooperative tour where we just showcase the different Black co-ops in the nation thanks to Zoom. And so next week, we'll be spending time with 6 cooperatives. We're hoping, I think we've made the job, created a space so that they align with the work that you're doing. So from like artist co-ops to like land and stewardship co-ops, well-being co-ops, a co-op of co-ops, in a sense, essentially a health reparations co-op. So yeah, we'll have that time next week. The next time we see you all to hear from 6 different cooperators throughout the day for about 25 minutes. We'll give you the list ahead of time. So if you have any questions or anything, you sort of have time to think about that or prepare. And yeah, I'm really excited about the session. If there are cohort members, cooperative members that are not in this cohort, this is the space where you're more than welcome to invite them just to sort of see, who else you're building with and who else is in the ecosystem. So yes, I think this was a really great session, and that's also like my favorite session that happens, just because we get to see the work in action. Yeah, and your peers in this work as you all develop your own cooperatives too.
Great. Well, take care, everyone. If there's anything final you want to share, but we hope that you have a good rest of your day, your weekend, and Happy New Year. Yeah. Peace, everyone.
Thank you.